Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. So I think the crash in Washington D.C. with the plane carrying the figure skaters, mostly innocent people, killed for really no reason, and the helicopter that crashed into it is clearly an act of deliberate terrorism. And I would say it's terrorism through process, so that you could use the incompetency given by DEI programs, which are always kind of baked in to create incompetency that you can then hide terrorism behind. Very similar to the terrorist attack at Trump Tower, that the Cybertruck blew up in front of Trump Tower, meant to create problems, and we're supposed to buy into all that. Of course, then there was the New Year's Day terrorist attack that the guy ran through all the innocent people in New Orleans. We're seeing activism here that is disguised behind other things, and of course those other things would be DEI hiring practices that are installed in your society to create the opportunities for just what we're seeing, mass chaos. And the timing of it is that ahead of Trump getting rid of telling all these federal workers you either fired or come back to work, and you have this radicalism. I don't think a lot of people understand the radicalism that is in some of these agencies and these labor unions that run them, even CIA agents and FBI agents. There's some really, truly insane people that they just don't click with society. And here they are making decisions that affect people like air traffic controllers. What we know about this accident was there should have been 30 air traffic controllers in the tower. There was only 19. There was contact with the pilot, but clearly the pilot of this helicopter is flying, I think, at 400 feet. It's supposed to be at 200 feet. And when you're doing air traffic control, stacking traffic is important. You got to be able to manage everybody, wherever they're at. And you can stack in the air. You don't have to have like people on the same level. And this pilot was at the same level as an aircraft that was, I think, descending for landing. And it was on a trajectory to strike it. And now, by looking at the video, it was only the pilot had to have seen what was going on, even though the air traffic control dialogue is strangely vacant of that kind of dialogue. I think with AI these days, you have to wonder who's actually talking back and whether or not you can actually trust what you're hearing. Just because you have some dialogue of a pilot, it refutes the actions that you saw, which is a helicopter went straight into the side of this plane. So everybody's talking about how could it, and they're talking about the higher requirements that are out there for hiring air traffic controllers, and it's the kind of radicalism we've seen in the teaching profession. When you have people who are grotesque radicals that should never even be on a taxpayer-funded dime, who know that there's a change coming and they're going to do something to stop that change from their perspective. The first reaction you get on the timing of something like this is, oh, boy, if we let all these people go and don't hire them or minimize the amount of people that are in the federal government, then we're going to have more accidents like this. So you put a stop to Trump's, at least from the point of view of these radicals, that would create enough anxiety to say, oh, let's not touch these government workers and keep them employed because bad things might happen. Look, the air traffic controllers were understaffed, but they were purposely understaffed. It wasn't like it was something because you had these DEI policies. You weren't out there hiring the best and brightest coming out of your military institutions. You were hiring people that were people of color, people that had mental deficiencies, people who were handicapped in some way, and you were seeking them out to put them in these positions. And then what you ended up with were not enough people because there's not enough people who are broken to fill those positions. But the DEI policy was saying, don't hire the healthy person who's merit-based and better to do the job. Hire the broken person and throw the healthy one away. and then we'll go out there and make sure you fulfill your hiring quotas, which there's just not enough people hiring for all these jobs. So the logic behind all that was a purposeful one. It was a decision to put to understaff. Now we're seeing since COVID, and we know this is radicalism that's connected to this global policy. We know the behavior is consistent with like COVID and how they tried to make it everybody work from home. They tried to purposely disrupt the way employee relationships with employer would occur, and they wanted to show that some disease could have power over the employer, which is a consistent union stance of management. Who's really in charge? If the employer's not in charge, who's in charge of the employee? So you're freeing the employee by creating some radical disease that goes out there, and then you have healthcare policy that trumps whatever management system you have, and they're the ones who are making your employer dance to some rule and regulation for compliance. And you see this in all compliance cultures, where compliance is the first thing. Compliance to a rule that somebody made is more important than actually achieving the objective, which might be making some good product. If it's a McDonald's restaurant, you want to make good hamburgers, and you want them to be consistent. You want the drive-through to run well. But if you're looking at DEI policies and you're getting penalized by the government because you don't have enough the person of this color, or you don't have enough handicapped people on your staff, maybe you don't have enough mentally deficient people on your staff, and you haven't made your process foolproof so that a person that is lacking sanity could actually can do the job. If that's what your priorities are, of course you're going to have trouble. And what we're seeing is the purposeful placement of those policies now in place that opens the door for all this incompetency. And now you're seeing a world on fire created by DEI policies that was quite purposeful to make this very thing happen. Now there's a lot of talk about whether this the pilot of this helicopter was a radical trans person. I don't think it was. Doesn't sound like it was, but there's a lot we don't know. And I don't know if we'll be able to trust anybody to tell us the true story at this point, because there's just so much speculation flying around. There's also a lot of talk about this helicopter could be remote controlled. You could have put that's why I said about the Tesla deal. You could put a body in that seat, and so that it looks like there's somebody around. You can run the voice off artificial intelligence, and that way there's a body to recover when the rescue people come. But you can fly the whole helicopter by remote control, because that helicopter should not have been at 400 feet and in a trajectory at an 11 o'clock position to key on that plane that was landing. There's a lot of things wrong with all of that, and there just should be no way that ever occurs. You shouldn't be training helicopters be in that area, but when you have the amount of incompetence that's baked into the process, you have to admit that it was put there to make accidents happen and to create an unstable society so that people would cling to government. And the timing of this thing, if you do buy into the whole remote helicopter deal, the timing of it couldn't be better, because Trump's getting ready to tell everybody, executive order, get to work. If you don't come into the office, you're done. And you got a lot of radicals out there in these labor markets, labor unions, government labor unions that are like, hey, you're not in charge. You don't tell me what to do. And of course, there's always 1 or 2% of somebody who's nuts who could get a hold of some technology or be in a process where they can hide the crime behind the DEI policies and put radical terrorism into play just because they don't want the world to change the way that voters obviously have wanted it to. And then you end up with crashed helicopters, blown up cars in front of hotels, and other problems of such a nature. Because the politics and policy were set to force everybody to be compliant to it without the value of a stable society being the driver. And that's what you see clearly with this crash of these airlines, this helicopter and this airline, and a lot of innocent people in Washington, D.C. Right ahead of Trump doing this big executive order to rein in the activism of these federal employees. These things usually add up to something that's bad. And so when I say that it's purposeful terrorism, I say it's process-oriented terrorism meant to exploit people's tendency for compliance to the people who write the rules, and those people who write the rules have ill intent in mind for how society functions. And this is clearly a case not just of incompetence, but that the incompetence was purposely placed to deflect everybody's true understanding of what really happened and who's responsible for it. And that's what we see clearly happening, emerging from this terrible accident. It's a horrendous thing to see happen. But as I said after the Tesla truck, the Cybertruck explosion in front of Trump Tower in Las Vegas, I think we're going to see more of this kind of thing because it's baked into the process, and these radicals they want to stay in charge, and they think that this is the way to do it. And I would not doubt if it's not a system error that was purposeful, and there were some people who remote controlled flew that helicopter right inside that plane to cause an incident, to get everybody to talk about what they want them to talk about, and to encourage federal workers to stay employed and not to let go of them. Because if you do, more of these things might happen. That's why I call it terrorism. It's to make you afraid to let go of federal workers, because you need more federal workers to prevent these kinds of disasters, which probably the federal workers may happen to begin with. It's a vicious cycle, and it's something we started a long time ago, and to fix it, it's going to cause a lot of hard discussions that we have to have one way or the other, and we're having it now. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.